So into our recent video already we have discussed how we can create your virtual machines using your Azure portal as well as your CLI. Now here I'm going to show you the same by using your Azure portal.
So we are on our portal now. Now what we need to do, we are going to create our virtual machine using PowerShell. So there are certain steps which we are going to follow. So very first what I'm going to do, I'm going to create your subnet configuration so that I'll create my subnet first, in which subnet I'm going to add my virtual machine. Then I'll be creating a VNet. I'll connect this subnet to your VNet over here. Then I'll be creating a public IP address for my system, then NSG configuration, that is a firewall configuration, then NIC I'll create, and then I'll create a configuration for my virtual machine where I'll define where I'll be creating my virtual machine, where which operating system I'll be using, which VM size I'll be using. So everything related to your virtual machine I'll be making over here. And secondly, I'll also add all the observable components which we have created into your VM config. And then the last step will be creating our virtual machine, and then we will also see how to connect this virtual machine. Okay, so everything we are going to do using your PowerShell. So let us start being creating subnet configuration into your PowerShell. So for that, I'm just going to start my PowerShell over here. So this is my PowerShell started, and I'm going to start with my Azure. So first I need to log in with my Azure account. So I'll use Azure RM account. Hit enter. I'll define my credentials here and the password. Now we are ready to go. Okay, so very first what I'm going to do, I'm going to create my subnet. So for creating my subnet, everything right now I'm going to store as a variable. So I'll use a subnet config here. So I'll define the name as subnet config, where I'm going to define new Azure RM virtual. Already we have used this command, virtual network subnet config, and I'm going to define the name for my subnet config. So I'll be using subnet 3. I'm going to add the address prefix here, that is 192.168.1.0/24. Hit enter. So your SC is added. Let us check. So this is your subnet configuration. Then the next step we are going to follow, we are going to create our virtual network here. So for creating the virtual network, already we have seen how to create your virtual network. Even this I'll be adding into your variable vnet 3, and here I'm going to add the commands new Azure RM virtual network. Okay, and I will define the resource group name here. So existingly we haven't created any resource group. So what I'll do, I'll just add a resource group over here first of all. I'll create a new resource group because the existing one I want to use. Resource group I'm going to create. Okay, so it will become 3, and this one 9th step. Okay, so I'm going to create a resource group here now. So we know how to create your new resource group, new Azure RM resource group. Okay, name of your resource group I'm going to define here as RG3. The location I'm going to define as East US. Hit enter. Once it is created, we'll be ready to go for your VNet. Okay, so now I'm going to define the VNet here. VNet 3 equals to, now we'll define the command network new Azure RM virtual network. I'm going to define the resource group name as the latest created RG3, and then I'm going to define the location So location I'm going to define as East US itself, and then I'm going to define the name for my virtual network. That will be VNet3, and then I'm going to define the address prefix for it. So this will be the address prefix. That is, I'm going to use 192.168.0.0/16, and then we'll define this subnet here. So the subnet, I'm going to define the subnet we have created, and we have set it as a variable, that is SC. Hit enter. Done. Okay. So here we have set our VNet3 configuration as well. Now the next step what we need to do is we will be creating a public IP address for our system, which I'm going to create. So let us get completed here. First your VNet3 will be created, then we will be moving towards your configuration of your public IP. So let us create a public IP. Public IP3 I'm going to create. Okay. So here I'm going to define the command where it will be creating my public IP address for my Azure RM. So I'll be defining public IP address for your resource group where I'm going to keep our public IP address. That will be again RG3, and then I'm going to define the location for it. Location again I'll be using East US. Allocation method that I'm going to define is static we are going to use. So we are going to define the static way of public IP address here, and then we will be defining the idle timeout for the idle timeout minutes for connecting to your system. So I can define 4 minutes, or if you want to define 5 minutes, we can define here. And then I'm going to define the name of my public IP address and the DNS which I'm going to define. So I'll be defining the name as public DNS, and I just want that it should fetch the DNS automatically. So I'm just going to take it as a random DNS which I'll be getting. Okay, so it's done. So this is what exactly we have already defined here. So once this PIP3 is created, we will move towards our next step where I will be creating NSG, that is your firewall, that is network security group for your system. Here I'll define the rule for my RDP because I'm going to create my virtual machine of Windows itself. So here I'll be defining the name and permission so that my system is accessible over the remote systems, that is through RDP. So I'll be allowing RDP protocol over here for everyone. So let us start with it. So here I'm going to start creating my NSG3 configuration, and here I'm going to define new Azure RM. Okay, network. Here I'm going to create a security group. So network security group I'm going to define. Okay, so the security group name I'm going to define as NSG3. Okay, and the protocol where I'm going to define is, okay, so directly we will be creating our priority for it. Okay, resource group name will define first of all. So I'm again going to create it into our resource group RG3, and then I'm going to define the location. Again, it will be East US. I'm going to define the security rule here. So I'll just define East, and I'll be defining the security rules. And the security rule, as we haven't defined here, and it will be too long to define it over here itself. So I'll just define NSG rule 3, and I'll be creating a rule separately into my variable here. So what I'll do, I'll add my NSG rules separately, and this rule will be automatically fetched by your NSG3. Okay, so let us start with that. So just we need to define the content into your NSG rule 3. So I'll be creating it. I'll create this over here, NSG rule 3, and I will define the rule into it. So for that, again, new and Azure RM, network security, rule configuration. Okay, so the commands are too big, you need to read it well. Name NSG3, where we are going to create our rule, and the protocol which I'll be defining will be again TCP. Okay, and the direction which I'll be defining will be again inbound. If you want, I'll just scroll it up so that you are able to see it well. And then we have defined the inbound to it. Then we will set the priority. So the priority I'm going to define as 1000 here. And then we'll define the source name. Okay, so the source, not no source name, we can say, we can call it as a source address prefix, or any of your port if you want to define, you can. So we'll be defining both. We will be defining the source port range. If you want to define any, you can define any. So right now I'm going to define any. Same way I'll define the source address prefix as well, any. So in short, I'm going to define it is coming from any source, or any particular range or any address prefix, everything should be allowed if it is coming for a protocol which I'm going to define over here. So as we know, the destination which I'm going to define here, that will be again I'll defining the destination address prefix. So address prefix again I'll define any, and same way destination port range we are going to fix here. So we are going to define the destination port range, that is 33. If you remember, we have also enabled into our previous video 3389. This is a port number of your RDP, and I'm going to define the rule access should be allowed. Okay, once you have defined it, it will accept this particular rule here. Done. So we have also created this NSG plus NSG rule. Now I'm going to create a new NIC. So for creating a new NIC, again I'll be creating it as into my variable, so NIC3. So why I'm adding it into variable is like, whenever we are going to create our virtual machine, we don't have to define all these big commands. In spite, I'll just give the variable names, automatically it will fetch the content of it. So next is NIC3. I'm going to create new Azure RM network interface, and then we are going to define the name of your network interface as NIC3 itself. Then the resource group I'm going to define as RG3, which we have created. Location again the same, east US. Next again we are going to define the subnet ID. Okay, sorry. Subnet ID. That will be again our VNet 3, which we have created. Okay, along with that I'm going to add the subnets here. Subnets. Okay, and then I'm going to use all the particular variables here. I'm going to define it into your 0.id. Okay, that's that. Then we are going to define the public IP address ID. So again I will be fetching this particular public IP address from pip dot id. Okay, and then it will create a network security group ID. So again I'll be fetching my NSG3, which we have created, dot id. Once you have done with it, set enter. It will be creating your NIC3. Once it is done, then we will moving towards your configuration of your virtual machine. So this step, VM config. Okay, so here we will be linking every component which we have created till now. We'll create it and we will link it into your VM config, and then we are going to create our virtual machine. So let us start with your VM config here. Okay, config 3 I'll define. New Azure RM. Before that also, one thing I'll define is my credentials. I'll define my credentials first. So first I'll define the credentials separately, so that it is not visible on the script, so we can directly define the credentials so that it will pop up for for defining the credentials into it. So how we are going to do it, that we are going to see here. Credentials equals to, I'll define the credential as get credential. If I'm going to define it as get credential, what it will do, it will again ask you for credentials. Okay, what credential do you want to add over here? So here you can add the credentials which you require. The username I'm going to add as test user 1, and I'm going to define the password for my user over here itself. Okay, so we have defined the get credentials. If suppose you have any kind of confusion that you have passed the wrong password, you can again define it. So what it will do, it will empty this particular variable, and it will flush it, and then it will add the new one. So again I'm going to define. So we have defined the credentials. Now what we need to do is we will create our VM config equals to new Azure RM VM config. Okay, VM name I'm going to define here. I'll be defining VM name as VM3 itself. Then we will define the VM size. VM size. And VM size I'm going to define as standard, and I'll be using one of my VM size, that is DS2. Okay, data centers, this is our one of our standard virtual machine size. Generally we have already talked about the VM size. If you don't know about the sizes, you can move into the portal and get access to the sizes which you have while you create your virtual machine. So while creating your virtual machine, we generally have different sizes you can find here. Example, I'm going to select machine here, resource manager, and the basic information. We need to define something over here, otherwise I won't be able to move. Okay, so this machine generally require a subscription because it's the paid one. Okay, we can also check it into your VM sizes. Not available, so okay, here we will set. So you have different VM sizes. You can check over here which are the sizes are available, and whichever you require you can get access to it. So you can see here, these are the general purpose VMs. Okay, so here you have the compute optimized VMs, is the memory optimized VMs, the storage VM, and GPU VM, high performance VM. So you can conduct or contain any kind of VM generally you require. So you can search for your VM sizes here. Next we are going to move back to our VM size. So I'm using a standard one, DS2, and again I'll add it with a new command where I'm going to set the Azure RM VM operating system. I'm going to set here. Okay, VM operating system I'm going to set as Windows. Okay, so a number of options generally we have, you can check over here. We have Linux. If you want to use our Linux operating system, you can use your computer name, credentials, whatever generally you require over here. So right now I'm going to use Microsoft Windows itself, and then computer name I'm going to define as VM3. Okay, and then I'm going to define the credentials here. So the credentials already we have supplied into your cred. Okay, and then I'm going to define the other particular command over here, where generally I'll define set Azure image. Okay, so I'm just going to use Azure RM VM, and I'm going to define the source image. Okay, the source image I'm going to define as from where I'm going to install my operating system into your Azure. So we can define the publisher name here. So we have different publishers for getting access to our all the particular images. So Microsoft Windows. Okay, and offer, I'm going to check for your Windows server, and then I'm going to define the SKUs. Into SKUs I'm going to install Windows Server 2016 data center, and then version I'm going to define here. Version will be latest, and then I'm going to add Azure RMVM network interface. Into network interface, I'm going to connect my NIC which I have created. So I'll add the NIC here. So I'll define the ID, that is NIC 3.ID. Okay, bind parameter to check for your server parameter which we have used. V0 cannot be bind to server. So let us check what exactly we have, where we define the servers here. Reshare name Microsoft Windows offer. Okay, so it is not having a space in between. Okay, done. So it has been created. Now the next step where I'm going to add my virtual machine, right? So for that, it is very easy to add your virtual machine now. Now I'm going to add a new Azure RM virtual machines. Okay, and I'm going to define the resource group here. Resource group RG3, RG3 which we have created. Location I'm going to define into East US, and then I'm going to define the VM, and here I'm going to take the VM config which we have created. Let us begin to our resource group RG3, and here you will find everything, the devices which you have created. Now the coming is your virtual machine, so it will take a little time to get access to all the particular resources we have added and fetch everything and create your virtual machine. So it will take a little time, we need to wait till then. So here I got an error. It's showing me like for creating this virtual machine which I'm trying to create, that is your S2. So this data center machine will require a premium disk. So I don't have a premium disk access and I haven't created any premium disk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create my virtual machine as standard A0 I'll be using. So this is the basic one. And then we will again create your virtual machine here. So now you can find the status of our virtual machine which has been created. So once I move into your virtual machine, you will be able to connect this particular machine directly from here, or you can directly connect it by using your PowerShell. So if I want to connect using our PowerShell, what you can do, you can get access to your Azure RM VM IP public IP addresses. Okay, RM public IP, sorry. Public IP addresses, and then I'm going to get access to the resource group name RG3, and I'm going to get and select the IP address which generally I have into RG3, that is your IP address, so that I can get the IP address that is my public IP address which we have created for your virtual machine. So I'm just going to connect my virtual machine using this particular public IP. So for connecting my virtual machine, I'll use mstsc /v colon and this particular IP address. Hit enter. Now it is getting connected, right? We'll define our username and the password we have defined. Hit enter. You're connected now, right? So once you're connected, it will again start creating your metrics and everything. You will get the details of it, right? So this is connected. Now here you will be able to find your Windows Server 2016 which we have installed over here. And also I want to discuss something like while creating your virtual machines, you might sometimes get problems regarding your publisher name, the offer name, or the image you are going to use. So if I want to get the information about the images generally we have, or your virtual machines publishers generally we have, so we can also get the image of your operating system generally we have into your Azure. So get Azure images, you can use the get Azure image, and you can also get information about your RMVM image offers, or number of offers generally we have. So it's asking you for the location. So it will offer you the location, it will provide you the images offered by the publisher. So you need to define the publisher name. So our publisher name is Microsoft Windows. Okay, Microsoft Windows. Hit enter. Okay, so it is Microsoft Windows Server East US. Publisher name Microsoft Windows Server. Hit enter. So it is showing you all the particular offers your Microsoft is providing you. I can get access to this particular offer, and I can also get the images what generally this Microsoft Windows Server offers you. So for that, I'll give the command get Azure RM VM image SKUs. Okay, hit enter. Location East US, publisher name Microsoft, and Windows Server. Hit enter. Offer Windows Server. Hit enter. Now it will provide you all the SKUs what your Windows Server offers you. That is from Microsoft. So if you want to change the image of your virtual machine, or if you want to create a new virtual machine containing a different operating system, you can select your virtual machine image you require. If suppose I want the other SKUs generally we have, and I want to check the number of, again, what are the offers generally we have of your VM images, so we can go and image and offer, hit enter. Location East US, publisher name again Microsoft Windows Server, hit enter. You can also get the SKUs of your Windows Hub, okay, or semi-annual. So let us check what we generally have into your Windows Hub. So for that, again, we'll move back and we'll give the command get Azure RM VM images SKU, hit enter. Location is US, publisher name Microsoft Windows Server, hit enter. Offers Windows Hub, right? So this is what your SKU have for your Windows Hub. So this is how generally you can get the images, you can get the size of your you can get the images, you can get the offer and publisher. Now what if I want to get the size of your Windows machine which is available? So for that, again, you can give the command Windows Azure RM VM size. Location East US, hit enter. It will show you all the particular Windows sizes which are available, so you should not get confused, and you'll get a proper name which you can use for creating your virtual machine. So I used standard A0. You can also use the other virtual machines images generally you have. It provides you the complete description of your number of cores of your processor, your memory, your maximum disk generally you have, or you can connect, and this is your OS disk size in MBs. So this is what exactly we have seen, how we can create our virtual machine using our PowerShell, how we can get the information of your different images, different sizes we generally have into your Azure. Through your PowerShell we can get the information, and also we have seen how we can connect to our existing virtual machine which we have created using our PowerShell, right? So this is our virtual machine. It is getting started, and it is loading the operating system. It's taking a little time. Okay, now you can find the operating system here, and I can do whatever I require here. If I want to configure the server, if I want to get the information of this particular system, I may get this. So I'll just get the information here. What is the host name of this machine? You can see that we have logged in through your user test user 1. Let us increase the font size so that it is visible to you clearly. It's a bit slow depending upon the network. Actually, you get the connectivity to this particular machines. I'm going to change the font size as well. So it is started for the first time. It's changing, and it's opening your all server configuration manager. You can see that I have provided the host name here. Once you hit enter, it will provide you the host name. So it will show you this is the host of your Windows server, which we have created. It is VM3. Okay, so it is VM3, right? So this is how generally you can connect your machine. You can get the configuration or the size of your virtual machine which you want to create. You can select it and you can use your virtual machine in some way. So in this particular session I'm completing over here. Into next session we are going to see how we can resize the existing virtual machines we have created over here.